Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityurma amritam gamaya.
Namaste. This series is about Āyurdāya, the system of calculations of one's lifespan and state of health, especially at the time of death. I think everybody wants to know, how long am I going to live? How many years can I expect? Although we don't claim to give totally accurate predictions, these methods can give us a very good guess as to the total span of life and how one will die, whether peacefully or violently, whether suddenly or gradually, in a good state of mind or in a disturbed state. And this can help us to prepare for death. And for those of us who are spiritually minded, to meditate on death in such a way that we can navigate it easily when it's time. So, like everything else in life, there are three modes of death: sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. In goodness, in passion, and in ignorance. In goodness, one dies slowly and peacefully, has time to make peace with life and death, and to prepare the mind for the transition by spiritual practices such as chanting mantras and meditation. If one dies in the mode of passion, it means suddenly, in a car accident, or in war, or in some kind of fight, or by heart attack, or other sudden type of death, which does not permit one to prepare properly, and which will lead to a human birth in the next life. And death in the tamoguna, the mode of ignorance, is if one is under the influence of drugs, or by suicide, or without having done any spiritual activities to prepare for the transition. And this leads to an animal birth. Because the state of mind at the time of death is very, very important. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the state of mind that you have at the time of death determines the condition of being in the next life. So if one is thinking of God, if one is peaceful and calm and collected at the time of death, one can go higher. In fact, one can go even to Brahman if one is chanting Aum and so on at the time of death. But if one is disturbed or surprised by death, or in a state of intoxication, such as people in nursing homes that are kept full of drugs and just to keep them quiet, then one goes to the animal species or even lower. Especially if a person has performed a lot of evil activities in their life. That, for example, career soldiers who have performed many atrocious activities in their life, they can go to some very dark regions, which we don't even want to talk about. But one who is a yogi, who knows the states of consciousness and how one transitions into another, which is something we've gone into in great detail in this channel, then one can attain the highest simply by a favorable mode of death. So let's look at the process of calculating the Āyurdāya given in Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra, the original document on the process of astrology, and see how it can prepare us for our inevitable death.
Ayur means health. Daya means to give. What does health give? Longevity. Longevity, or lifespan, can be calculated in Jyotiṣa, and this information is given in Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra.
'Ayur Daya, 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 'Ayur
This will be a three-part series. Part 1 deals with Āyurdāya and ashtakavarga, the longevity calculations. Part 2 will deal with Pindayu longevity calculation. And Part 3, Naisargika Ayurdaya, and the combined longevity calculation of all three methods, which produces the finished result. In this Part 1, we'll cover ashtakavarga-based Āyurdāya calculations. First, we'll go over an introduction to Āyurdāya from Brihadarashara Hora Shastra. Then, we'll have an overview of the four methods: ashtakavarga-based longevity, Navamsa-based longevity, Maraka, or death-inflicting planets, and Pindayu and Naisargika Ayurdaya calculations will be covered in the next parts 2 and 3. In this series, we'll show a practical example using my chart, the Lagna and ashtakavarga points, longevity based on ashtakavarga and Maraka assessment, Saturn's strength, and other key findings. All in all, there are 4 ashtakavarga-based methods that we will cover in this episode. Ayusha from Lagna, ascendant, calculation based on planetary placements in specific houses, the importance of Lagna Lord's strength and benefics or malefics. 2. Ayusha from moon, Chandra Lagna, using the moon as the reference point for longevity, and how emotional and mental health influences lifespan. 3. Ayusha from Navamsa, the 9th divisional chart. How D9, the Navamsa, refines lifespan predictions, and the role of ashtakavarga and benefic and malefic associations. 4th, Ayusha from ashtakavarga, the point-based method. Calculation of longevity based on a house bindus, or points, and interpretation of planetary strength. To start, we need to calculate your birth chart from the date, time, and place. We need your Lagna, ascendant, moon, and key planetary placements to work through the calculations accurately. So, we have to cast your birth chart before we can do the Āyurdāya calculations. Once we have that, we'll go step by step, calculating the Lagna-based Ayusha, assessing lifespan from the ascendant, Chandra Lagna Ayusha, using the moon as the reference, ashtakavarga Ayusha, bindus, points in longevity-related houses, and the Navamsa Ayusha, checking the D9 divisional chart influences. So, this is my Rashi chart, commonly known as birth chart. And these are the positions in the chart made into a table, which we can then feed to our calculation process. Step 1 is the Lagna-based longevity assessment. And for that, we need to look at the strength of Lagna Lord, which in this case is Jupiter. Jupiter is in Scorpio, the 9th house, a friendly sign, Scorpio, and a strong placement. Jupiter in Anuradha Nakshatra connects with the nakshatra ruler, 5th house Saturn in Cancer. Jupiter's condition is favorable for longevity. We'll see later that Saturn is very strong. Second, we need to calculate the influences on the 1st house, the Lagna. There are no planets directly in Pisces Lagna, so we have to check the aspects, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, or benefics aspecting the Lagna. And we need to check the condition of the 8th house, the longevity house. The 8th house from Pisces is Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus, which is in the 10th house, Sagittarius. There are no direct planets in Libra, but again, we need to check the aspects. Aspects in Vedic astrology are called drishti, which means looking. So the planets that are looking at the first and eighth houses will determine the influence on the longevity houses. So first we see the aspects on the Lagna. And here Jupiter and Ketu have strong aspects, and Saturn comes in third with about 60%. Also the aspects on the eighth house, where Mercury and Saturn have strong aspects, and others we can more or less neglect. Next, the Samudaya ashtakavarga, the total ashtakavarga points, is very useful for longevity estimation in Āyurdāya calculations. To refine our analysis, we need the total bindus, or points, for these key houses. Lagna, first house, Pisces, has 32. The eighth house, Libra, the longevity house, has 31. 10th house, Sagittarius, this is a secondary longevity house, has 24. Third house, another secondary longevity house, has 25. And finally, Saturn's ashtakavarga, because Saturn is the Āyurdāya karana. Its strength matters a lot, and it has 39 points. So the Samudaya ashtakavarga calculation, according to Brihat-Parashara Hora Shastra, longevity is influenced by the total bindus, or points, in key houses. The general rule is more than 30 bindus means strong and supportive for longevity. 25 to 30 bindus means moderate effects, neutral to slightly weak. And less than 25 bindus means weak, potentially reducing longevity. So from the chart we can see the first house, Lagna, in Pisces has 32 points. That's a strong, good vitality and overall health indication. The eighth house in Libra has 31 points, which is also strong, a well-supported longevity house. The 10th house, Sagittarius, has 24. This is weak. The karma-dharma longevity is slightly low. The third house, the other secondary longevity house, has only 25. So that is also considered weak. But Saturn's bindus have 39 points. Very strong. Means long life and endurance. Now, the interpretation and synthesis of all these readings. Lagna 32 and 8th house 31, the primary longevity houses, are both strong, a very positive sign for longevity. The third house, 25, is on the lower side, but not critical. 10th house, with 24, is weak, which can indicate struggles related to career, effort, and major life direction that might impact health. Saturn is extremely strong with 39 points, which is a great indicator of long life, endurance, and the ability to withstand hardships. Since Saturn is the Āyurdāya karana, the cause of longevity, this is a very favorable factor. So the preliminary conclusions are strong longevity potential based on the ashtakavarga. Saturn's strength, 39 bindus, further supports this. Some caution with the 10th and 3rd house influence. Life purpose and self-effort may have challenges which could indirectly affect well-being and therefore longevity. We now have a preliminary Lagna and ashtakavarga-based longevity assessment. The next step in BPHS longevity calculations involves Marika, death-causing planets, checking the influence of the 2nd and 7th lords. And as we can see from this birth chart and lordships chart, the lord of the 2nd house is in 11, Mars, and the lord of the 7th, Mercury, is in the 12th house. Now let's analyze the Marika death-inflicting influences based on the 2nd and 7th lords. The 2nd house lord is Mars. He's in the 11th house of Capricorn, exalted to the degree. That's a very strong impact. Mars as a Marika in a good house can give an active life, but could also indicate accidents or health crises as major turning points. Mercury, the lord of the 7th house, Virgo, is placed in the 12th house, Aquarius. This is weak. Mercury in the 12th can indicate endings, losses, or long-term health concerns affecting longevity. The overall Marika impact is that Mars in the 11th, exalted in Capricorn. Since Mars is exalted and in a Trika, profit house, it is not immediately dangerous. However, Mars can cause sudden dramatic events related to longevity, perhaps accidents, surgeries, or times of extreme exertion that impact health. Mars is strong, so it's not a major threat. However, Mars's impulsive nature can still bring sudden crises affecting health. Mercury in the 12th. Mercury as a Marika in the 12th house of loss, hospitals, and endings suggests that long-term or chronic health issues could be a factor in old age. It could also indicate spiritual detachment at the end of life, possibly renunciation or seclusion. Mercury in the 12th suggests a quieter exit, possibly due to age-related decline rather than any sudden death. Now let's take a look at the Navamsa Angshayu, the D9 longevity calculations. D9 is an auspicious chart that tells us about our mate and inner feelings. Astrologers use D9 to determine one's health, spirituality, lifespan, inner feelings, and mate or partner. In this chart, the Lagna Lord Saturn is in the 10th house, or Capricorn, in D9. Saturn in its own house, Capricorn in the 10th, is very strong, supporting both longevity and overall vitality. This is a positive factor as Saturn is a key significator for long life. And the 8th house lord, the Sun, is in the 12th, Aquarius. Sun being in the 12th house suggests a long but perhaps isolated life. The 12th house is related to endings, loss, and final liberation. So this placement suggests slow, gradual decline toward the end of life rather than a sudden or violent death. Now let's look at the interpretation of the D9 longevity impact. Saturn in the 10th house. Saturn's strength here indicates endurance and strength throughout life, especially in terms of career, public life, and spiritual maturity. Saturn in its own sign, Capricorn, is very stable and has positive influence on longevity. Sun in the 12th house, in D9, can suggest a gradual decline, possibly related to long-term health issues or the natural aging process. This placement generally supports spiritual advancement or detachment at the end of life, possibly through meditation, renunciation, or quiet retreat. Saturn in the 10th is highly supportive for longevity, while the Sun in the 12th suggests that the end of life may come after a period of diminishing vitality, but with a peaceful, detached exit. Synthesizing longevity calculations. At this point, we've covered the major longevity calculations. Lagna-based longevity has strong support from Lagna and ashtakavarga. The Marika influence, Mars and Mercury, show mixed influences. And the Navamsa-based longevity calculation, with Saturn's strength and Sun's placement, suggest a long, steady life, but possible slow decline in later years. That's it for Part 1. In Part 2, we will explore the Pindayu Ayurdāya method, focused on planetary positions in relation to the moon's nakshatra. And in Part 3, we will cover the Naisargika Ayurdāya method, a more general natural approach based on the moon's position. Finally, we synthesize all the readings into a comprehensive view of longevity and health.
So that's the process of calculating the Āyurdāya, at least the first couple of methods. In the second and third parts of this series, we'll go into the alternative methods, and then at the end, we'll compile them all into a comprehensive vision. This is so that the intuition of the astrologer can be allowed to penetrate the situation and see the combination of all the influences and come to a definite conclusion. If you want this kind of reading for yourself, you have to get a birth chart reading and then the Āyurdāya reading. So we can facilitate that. Please get in touch and we can set up your reading. So join us in the next parts for more information on these very important astrological calculations. Aum Tat Sat. Aum Shakti Aum. Aum Namah Shivaya.